The moment you stop chasing her is the moment she starts questioning everything. Most people don't realize this, but the more you chase someone, the more you slowly give away your power without even noticing it. You start texting first every time, you respond instantly, you overthink what it's saying, you begin adjusting your behavior just to keep her interested. And while you think you're showing effort, what you're actually showing is dependence. You're communicating without saying it directly that your attention is always available and that she doesn't have to do anything to earn it. And that's where the shift begins because attraction doesn't grow in an environment where everything is given freely. It grows in space, in curiosity, in the unknown. When you're always there, always chasing, always available, there's no mystery left. There's no challenge. There's no reason for her to lean forward because you're already doing all the work. But the moment you stop, everything changes. When you stop chasing, you're not playing games, you're returning to yourself. You're redirecting your energy back into your purpose, your goals, your life. You're no longer waking up thinking about how to get her attention. Instead, you're focused on building something meaningful for yourself. And that shift is powerful because it changes how you show up in every interaction. Now, instead of trying to impress, you're simply expressing. Instead of seeking validation, you're grounded in your own value, and people can feel that difference immediately. It's not about what you say, it's about the energy you carry. From her perspective, this is where confusion starts to kick in. She's used to your attention, she's used to you being predictable. And when that pattern breaks, her mind naturally tries to fill in the gap. She starts wondering why you're not reaching out like before. She starts thinking about the conversations, the moments, the connection you had. And that's when the power dynamic begins to shift. Because now, instead of you chasing her, she's thinking about you. Instead of you wondering what she's doing, she's wondering what you're doing. And it's not because you forced anything, it's because you removed the one thing that made her comfortable, your constant availability. This is where many people make a mistake. They think stopping the chase is about ignoring, playing hard to get, or acting cold, but that's not it at all. It's about genuinely detaching from the need for a specific outcome. It's about being okay whether she comes back or not because your life is already moving forward. And when you reach that point, something interesting happens. You become naturally attractive again. Not because you're trying to be, but because you're no longer operating from a place of lack. So the real power isn't in chasing harder. It's in knowing when to step back, refocus, and let the dynamic reveal the truth on its own. And that's where everything begins to change. One of the biggest mistakes most people make is believing that giving more attention will create more attraction. In reality, when attention is constant, predictable, and unearned, it starts to lose its value. And over time, it doesn't just become normal, it becomes expected. That's where the imbalance begins. When you're always the one initiating, always available, always validating, you slowly place yourself in a position where your presence is no longer special. It becomes routine. She knows you'll text, she knows you'll reply instantly, she knows you'll be there no matter what. And while that might feel like stability to you, to her it can feel like there's nothing left to earn, nothing left to discover. This is how her ego starts to inflate without her even realizing it. Because when someone receives constant attention without effort, they begin to associate that attention with their own value instead of recognizing the effort behind it. She starts to feel like she's the one being pursued, the one being prioritized, the one in control of the dynamic, and naturally she leans back while you lean forward. The problem is attraction doesn't grow when one person is doing all the work. It grows when there's balance, when both people are investing, both people are curious, both people are engaged. But when you're over giving, you remove her need to invest. You take away her opportunity to wonder, to reach out, to think about you. And without that investment, her emotional connection begins to weaken. This is why you'll often see a shift in behavior. At first, she might respond with excitement. She might enjoy the attention, the compliments, the consistency. But over time, that excitement fades. Her responses become shorter. The energy changes. The same effort that once got a strong reaction now gets minimal engagement. And most people respond to this by chasing even harder, thinking they need to win back that initial spark. But chasing more only makes the problem worse because now instead of restoring attraction, you're reinforcing the imbalance. You're showing that no matter how little she invests, you'll continue to give more, and that removes any sense of urgency or curiosity on her side. There's no reason for her to step forward when you're already doing everything. The truth is, attraction thrives on space and reciprocity. It needs room to breathe. It needs moments where she wonders about you, where she feels your absence, where she has the opportunity to invest her own energy into the connection. When you understand this, you stop trying to win someone over with constant attention. You stop over explaining, over texting, and over giving. Instead, you create a dynamic where your attention has value, where it's given naturally, but not endlessly. And the moment that endless validation disappears, that's when the illusion breaks. That's when her ego no longer feels constantly reinforced and she starts to notice the shift because what was once guaranteed is no longer certain. And that's when everything begins to change. Silence is something most people fear, especially when it comes to attraction. The moment communication slows down or stops, the instinct is to fix it immediately, to send another message, to check in, and to make sure everything is still okay. But what most don't understand is that silence, when used naturally and not as a tactic, is one of the most powerful forces in shifting attraction. When you stop chasing and your constant communication disappears, you create something that wasn't there before, space. And in that space, something very important begins to happen. Her mind starts to fill in the gaps. Before, everything was predictable. She knew when you would text, how you would respond, and how much attention she would receive. There was no uncertainty, no mystery. But now that pattern is broken. And when patterns break, people start to think. She begins asking herself questions she didn't need to ask before. Why hasn't he reached out? Did something change? Is he focusing on something else? Is he talking to someone else? That curiosity isn't forced. It's a natural reaction to the sudden absence of something that used to be consistent. And curiosity is a powerful emotional trigger because the human mind doesn't like unanswered questions. When there's a gap in information, it tries to close it. And the more space there is, the more active that process becomes. She starts replaying past conversations, remembering moments, analyzing your behavior. In a way, you go from being constantly present in her notifications to being present in her thoughts. That's a completely different level of attention. This is where emotional space becomes more valuable than constant communication. When you're always there, she doesn't have the chance to think about you because you're already right in front of her. But when you step back, you give her the opportunity to feel your absence. And absence, when there was a connection before, often amplifies feelings rather than diminishing them. However, this only works when it's genuine. If you're using silence as a strategy while internally feeling anxious, checking your phone every minute, and hoping for a response, that energy eventually shows. Real silence comes from being busy with your own life, your own goals, and your own priorities. It's not about ignoring, it's about not needing to force interaction. When that kind of silence is present, it creates a natural shift. She may start to reach out, initiate conversation, or find subtle ways to reconnect, not because you asked her to, but because the space made her curious enough to act. And even if she doesn't respond immediately, the dynamic has already changed. You're no longer the one filling every gap. You're no longer the one carrying the interaction. You've created a situation where she has to decide whether she wants to step forward or not. That's where clarity comes from. Because silence doesn't just create curiosity, it reveals true interest. If there's something there, it will surface. If there isn't, you'll see that too without wasting more time or energy chasing something that was never mutual. So instead of fearing silence, understand its role. It's not the end of connection. It's the space where real feelings have the chance to grow or fade naturally. And in that space, the truth always reveals itself. What really shifts everything is the moment she starts to feel your absence in a real way. Not just that you're not texting as much, but that the energy you once brought into her life is no longer there. That's when comparison begins, even if she's not consciously aware of it. When you were present, you brought a certain vibe. Your attention, your consistency, your way of communicating, your presence. At the time, she may have taken it for granted because it was always available. But once it's gone, she starts to notice what's missing. And this is where something important happens. She begins to compare. She compares how you made her feel to how others make her feel. She compares the conversations, the connection, the level of attention. And often, what she realizes is that not everyone shows up the way you did. Not everyone brings that same level of energy, confidence, or interest. And that realization doesn't come when you're constantly around, it comes when you're not. This is why your absence can carry more weight than your presence ever did when you were chasing. Because now, instead of you trying to prove your value, she's the one recognizing it on her own. And that's far more powerful. People don't truly appreciate something when it's constantly given. They appreciate it when they have to reflect on it, when they feel the gap it leaves behind. At the same time, her ego starts to shift. Before, she may have felt like she was in control, like she could have your attention whenever she wanted. But now that certainty is gone. And when certainty disappears, awareness increases. She starts to realize that you're not as easily replaceable as she may have assumed. That thought alone changes the dynamic, because once someone sees that you're not just another option, but someone who brought something unique into their life, they begin to reevaluate their behavior. They may start to question whether they took you for granted, whether they should have invested more, whether they should reach out. And all of this happens without you saying a single word. That's the key. This shift isn't created through convincing, explaining, or chasing. It's created through absence and self respect. It's created by stepping back and allowing her to come to her own conclusions. But here's the important part: you don't do this expecting a reaction. You don't disappear just to make her miss you. You step back because you respect your own time and energy. You stop giving to someone who isn't meeting you at the same level. And if she notices, that's a result, not the goal. Because the real win isn't whether she comes back or not. The real win is that you've stopped placing your value in someone else's hands. And when she finally realizes what she lost, it's not because you tried to prove it, it's because she had the space to see it for herself. After the silence, after the space, after the shift in energy, something interesting starts to happen. The same person who once sat back and received all your attention may slowly begin to lean forward. And it doesn't always come in a big, obvious way. It often starts small, subtle messages, random check ins, reactions to your stories, or simple questions that don't seem that important on the surface. But if you look deeper, you'll see what's really going on. She's trying to reestablish the connection. Before, you were the one initiating everything. You were the one keeping the conversation alive, making plans, driving the interaction forward. And now that you've stepped back, there's a gap. And if she feels any level of interest or attachment, she'll naturally feel the need to fill that gap. This is where the dynamic begins to flip. Instead of you wondering when she'll text, she starts wondering about you. Instead of you trying to get her attention, she starts finding ways to get yours. And it's not because you asked for it, it's because your absence created enough space for her to feel it. But here's where most people lose the advantage they've created. The moment she reaches out, they go right back to their old patterns. They respond instantly, they over engage, they start chasing again as if nothing changed. And in doing that, they undo the very shift that made her come back in the first place. Because what attracted her back wasn't over attention, it was your detachment. So when she starts seeking your attention, your role is not to chase harder, it's to maintain your center. You respond, but you don't overdo it. You engage, but you don't lose your focus. You allow the interaction to grow naturally without trying to control the outcome. This creates a new dynamic, one where both sides are investing, and that's where real attraction begins to rebuild. You'll also notice that her behavior may become more consistent. She might initiate more, show more curiosity, or put more effort into maintaining the connection. And this is important because it tells you that the interest is becoming mutual rather than one sided. But you still have to stay aware. Just because she comes back doesn't mean everything is automatically different. The real difference comes from how you show up. If you stay grounded, focused, and self respecting, the dynamic continues to evolve in a healthy direction. But if you fall back into chasing, the balance disappears again. This is about setting a new standard, not through words, but through behavior. You're showing, without saying it, that your time and attention are valuable, that they're given freely, but not endlessly. And when someone realizes that they have to meet you halfway to keep that connection, they begin to invest in a way they didn't before. So when she starts reaching out, don't see it as a signal to chase again. See it as a test of whether you've truly changed your mindset. Because the moment you stay grounded is the moment the dynamic truly shifts. At the end of everything, beyond the silence, beyond the shift, beyond whether she comes back or not, there's a deeper lesson that most people overlook. It's not really about her, it's about you. your standards, your mindset, and how you value your own time and energy. When you stop chasing, what you're really doing is reclaiming your self respect. You're no longer placing someone else at the center of your life while you orbit around them, hoping for attention, hoping for validation, hoping for a response. Instead, you become the center of your own world again. Your goals, your purpose, your growth, those become the priority. And from that place, everything changes because real attraction doesn't come from trying to be enough for someone else. It comes from knowing that you already are. When you operate from that mindset, you naturally set boundaries without needing to say much. You don't tolerate inconsistency, you don't chase unclear signals, and you don't overinvest in someone who isn't meeting you at the same level, not out of ego, but out of self awareness. You understand your value, and you're not willing to compromise it just to keep someone's attention. And that's where the real shift happens. Because when someone interacts with you now, they feel that difference. There's a calm confidence in how you speak, how you act, and how you carry yourself. You're not trying to impress, you're not trying to convince, you're simply being. And that kind of energy is rare. It's attractive because it's grounded, stable, and authentic. This also frees you from a mindset that keeps most people stuck, the need for a specific outcome. When you're chasing, you're attached. You're focused on getting a reply, getting her attention, getting her approval. But when you stop chasing, you detach from that outcome. You're open to connection, but you're not dependent on it. And that's power. Because now, whether she comes back or not, you're still moving forward. Your life isn't on pause waiting for someone else to decide your value. You're building, growing, and evolving regardless of what anyone else does. And ironically, that's what makes people gravitate toward you even more. But the real reward isn't external, it's internal. It's the peace that comes from not overthinking every interaction. It's the confidence comes from knowing you don't need to force anything. It's the clarity that comes from seeing people's actions for what they are instead of what you hope them to be. And once you reach that point, you stop chasing not just one person, but the need for validation altogether. That's when attraction becomes effortless because it's no longer something you're trying to create. It's something that naturally follows who you've become. And that's the moment everything truly changes.